Well, it's 7:30 in Melbourne, and it's great to see you here. I'm Dr. Daryl Moran. I'm the District Governor of District 9810 in the eastern part of Melbourne, from the Bay to the hills. It's my great pleasure to welcome you here tonight. We've had 93 registrations for this event from every state of Australia, and also from 6 different countries as well. We've had registrations from obviously Australia, New Zealand, USA, Great Britain, Italy, and Turkey. So we're delighted. And of course, being Rotarians, not all of them are here right at this minute at 7:30, but I'm sure they will be. We're just going to ask you to stay on mute. That way we won't hear your dog or your grandchildren or your motorcycle gang in the front room. We're going to deal with questions in this way. In a moment, I'll introduce Ian, who will introduce Gordon. If you have questions, we'd ask you to direct them through the chat to Trish Carr, who is our Chair of Technology and is a co-host, to Trish Carr, if you have any questions. And she will filter those, and we'll deal with those towards the end of the session. This is being recorded, and it will be posted on the District 9810 YouTube channel in the next day or two. If you go to our district website, 9810, you'll find it there. The speakers will be spotlit, as you can see at the moment, a sensationally good-looking Rotarian and me on the screen at the same time. And the techies will deal with all that. And so without further ado, we're looking forward to a fantastic evening. We greatly appreciate both gentlemen being here. Ian Risley, of course, past Rotary International President, 2017-18, needs no introduction at all, and so I'm not going to give him one of any great length at all, because we're here to hear from Ian and also with Gordon in conversation. So let's give them a great welcome. Over to you, Ian Risley.
Thank you, Governor Daryl, and hello everyone, and President nominee Gordon. Welcome virtually to Australia, and in particular to the host district 9810. It's very good of you to be with us.
You're very welcome. It's great to be with you.
As Daryl was saying, we have our version of a sellout crowd tonight, so you can pretend that it's a Mark Knopfler concert, or maybe The Commitments, something like that, something appropriately almost Scottish. I do appreciate, Gordon, you sending, in the middle of the night, mind you, but it did wake me up, the photo of the final scoreboard of the rugby test at Murrayfield, overnight our time. It was described in the press here as, this is a quote, an error-filled game. And Australia lost, so I presume we were more effective at making mistakes. Is that the way you see it?
Yeah, well, it certainly wasn't a classic game. We enjoyed the result, obviously, but I think Scotland got lucky that we caught Australia cold. It was their first game of the series, and it was our second game. We did a warm-up against Tonga the week before, and that was a bit of a walkover, but at least it got us into our stride. And but you know, we're Scottish. We've got to take any win we can get.
The famous Stuart McInally, I think he's still in the Scottish squad. Is he a relation?
Yeah, no, he's not. Well, we often say that if he plays well, he is, but if he doesn't play, he's not. But he's not a relation. He's actually ill at the moment and isn't in the squad for the autumn series. But yeah, it's been good over the years to have a McInally, if for no other reason than people can now pronounce and spell McInally.
I won't have a go at the people who organised this event who had trouble with McInally. Let's not dwell on that. We thought we were being first in line to have you virtually meet us, but you've been speaking to Australia already, including, if I'm not mistaken, the Rotary Club of Canberra last night. Did they treat you well?
Yeah, well, you know, they treated me very well. I would say they were all, of course, it was 6 o'clock in the evening there. So they were all sipping on their drams of whiskey while I was contenting myself with my morning coffee. And but no, they treated me very well, and of course that was less than 24 hours after the rugby test, so they had to be very careful. It was only 7 o'clock in the morning here. I have to say, you're very civilized. It's already 8:30 here, which is much better than a 7 a.m. start. I used to think I was a morning person until yesterday morning.
Yeah, well, of course, the reason that our friends in Canberra had it at 6 p.m. is they were still sober at 6 p.m. If they'd tried 7:30, it'd be a mess in Canberra, I've got to tell you. You are, of course, no stranger to Australia, and in fact, you led the group that reviewed the final candidates to stage the RI convention here in 2023. What were your impressions of Melbourne, and what factors enabled it to beat London for the honour of staging the convention?
Well, I have to say I was impressed by Melbourne, and we had a great visit.
Melbourne? Did you say Melbourne?
Melbourne. And we had a great visit. It was one of the last international visits I did, if my memory serves me correctly. And the thing I was particularly impressed about Melbourne was the can-do mentality of the people we met there. Both the Rotarians and the convention staff that we met there. They had a real can-do mentality that said, we want you to come here. We can deliver this convention. As a city, I loved it. It was accessible. The people appeared to be friendly. I loved the fact that, you can walk from downtown out to the convention area, out to the Rod Laver Arena, and of course the convention centre itself is right there in the downtown. There's culture in Melbourne. I don't need to tell you that. There's culture in Melbourne. The music scene and the art scene was very impressive. I enjoyed our trip out to Flemington. I won a couple of races, so what's not to like about that? And of course, as a big coffee fan, there's a great coffee culture in Melbourne. So everything about it was good. London was a good opportunity as well. London was a good candidate, but I found London, I know London very well, but I reckon London as a convention venue, everything was very spread out. Probably that would be my biggest thing, is the accessibility in Melbourne, and the friendliness of both the professional convention people and also the Rotarians that we came in touch with.
Excellent. Of course, it will be difficult for Melbourne to put on a better show than the absolutely outstanding 2018 convention in Toronto, where you were the chairman, but we will certainly try. And indeed, it will be at the Melbourne Convention that you'll be the incoming president. No pressure, but we expect a fabulous speech. Well,
you know me, Ian. Why use one word when you can use 100? So it won't be a short speech. And it's interesting, turning back to Toronto and thinking back to Toronto. A lot of what made Toronto successful, apart from the outstanding president we had, it wasn't the chair, it was and I don't know whatever became of him, but the facilities in Toronto were not unlike the facilities in Melbourne in terms of it was accessible. We had a great arena for these plenary sessions, and I think that's so valuable when it comes to convention. And my great thrill is that I will be the incoming president in Melbourne. And who would have thought that would have happened when we were there inspecting it as a potential convention venue? So, all very exciting.
I would have, but let's not dwell on that. Now, down to more serious stuff. You have made comments recently regarding Rotary's, quote, resilience and capacity to bounce back after disasters like COVID. Does that mean you see this current time as a time of opportunity?
I think this is a time of great opportunity, because I think what the last 18 months has given us is it's given us an opportunity just to draw a line in the sand and look at how we operate. And we've learned so much over the last 18 months or so about how we can operate, how we can be more nimble, and how we can move forward. There's this wonderful phrase that gets bandied about, build back better. But I've been talking about building forward better. And the opportunity we have at the moment to build forward better, we've never had it before, and we may not have it again for a long time. And so what we've got to do is we've got to learn the lessons of the last 18 months, and we've got to look at how we've operated. But the one thing we've not got to do is we've got to be careful we don't just completely turn Rotary into an online organisation, because we are social beings. We do enjoy each other's company, and we want to see each other. Even you, Ian, I'd quite like to see you in 3 dimensions again, rather than just in a little box on my screen. And I think that's important. So it's a question of balance. We've got to be careful that we don't just suddenly say, yes, everything can be done online, but a great deal can be done. And, I know in my own part of the world, I'd be very surprised if things like club committee meetings or district meetings aren't held online the majority of the time going forward. We're getting much better attendances at them, for one thing, because you're not asking people to travel distances to attend a meeting. So I think as we come out of it, and hopefully, I know things are improving in Australia and things are certainly improving here. US has just opened up again to travel. Hopefully we are beginning to move forward out of it. We've got so many opportunities to move forward in a better way. And I really hope that we can make use of this negative, if you like, that we've had to endure for the last while, if only for the sake of all these poor souls who have lost their lives. 5 million people have now died of COVID. We owe it to them to move forward in a better way.
Yeah, well put. So does this time of opportunity also extend to and apply to the Rotary Foundation?
I think it does. I think one of the things it does is it elevates the status of the foundation, if you like, and that we have so much experience on the rollout of vaccines with the polio eradication campaign, and we can offer that help and assistance, and certainly offer our ambassadorial skills, if you like, in terms of ensuring that we see adequate and proper rollout of the COVID vaccine, because that's very inequitable at the moment. We're finding parts of the world where vaccine rates are high, and then you go into Africa where the vaccine rate is appallingly low. Find parts of the world where there's vaccines on the shelf about to go out of date, and yet there's other people in the world crying out for it. So I think we have to become advocates for that. We have to become advocates to impress on people the importance of being vaccinated, of sticking by what rules the guidelines we're told to stick by. And so that's an important aspect. But I think in terms of moving forward, the foundation, again, can also learn a lot in its administration and learn a lot in how it operates as we come out of COVID.
You and Heather are excellent personal supporters of the Rotary Foundation. So what is it about the foundation that motivates you to contribute? Well,
it's very kind of you to say we're excellent supporters. I think, like everybody, we try and do our bit, and that's all you can hope to do. One of the things, I'm a Scotsman, so Scotsmen have a reputation for being careful with their money. And one of the things I like about the foundation is the very fact that I can be 100% certain it will take good care of any money I'm able to put to it. And, we only need to look at the reports it gets every year from the Charity Navigator to see that it is one of the most respected foundations anywhere in the world. And I think that's one of the things that impresses me about the foundation. And it's also the knowledge that it is there as the bedrock of Rotary to allow Rotary to carry out the good that it does around the world. And I've often said, as a dentist working in Edinburgh in isolation, how could I affect the life of a child in Peru? How could I affect the life of a child in Rwanda? Well, the way I can do that is through the Rotary Foundation, and I've been very happy to do so over the years, and will remain very happy to do so to the best of my ability.
Tell us about a project that you've seen that was assisted by our Rotary Foundation and that you found inspiring.
Well, like yourself and like many people on the screen, I guess, I've been lucky enough to see a lot of different projects that have been supported by the foundation. Given my quasi-medical background, I guess, I'm always very interested in ones that are health related. One in particular that comes to mind was a project in Cambodia, which was a project where it was actually the Rotary Club of Freshwater Bay was one of the supporters of that, the sponsors of that. The other one was a club in Phnom Penh, and they were looking after 4,000 children, giving them dental treatment for a 2-year period. So 4,000 children over 2 years were getting dental treatment that was alleviating pain, alleviating suffering. But one of the nice things about it, of course, was that because they supplied new equipment to kick that project off, that equipment was left behind after the project finished and it became sustainable, and the government took it over and carried on treating these children. So, that was a great example of how we can be successful and creative in our projects. And, there are many, many others. I think of a project down in Brazil. There's a neonatal problem in Brazil, and the neonatal rate in one area death rate was very much higher than anywhere else, and so there was a project put into place that provided neonatal equipment, educated pregnant adolescents in neonatal care and breastfeeding, and as a consequence they halved the neonatal death rate in that particular area. So these are the sort of things that really press my buttons as far as the Rotary Foundation is concerned and the sort of projects that we do.
You mentioned sustainability in regard to the earlier project. That's a really important part of what the foundation does, isn't it?
Very important part. We're not a sticking plaster. What we want to be able to do is to actually kick something off that we can then step back from and will continue. And I think the sustainability is an essential part of any project design, that as we finish the project, the benefit will go on for a long time to come. And you see that happening all the time, and that is very important. Yeah.
And I think that differentiates the Rotary Foundation from lots of other projects and programs, the fact that it is a long haul issue.
Yes, it does. Exactly. We're not the cavalry coming in over the hill to solve the problem and then walk away again. We're coming in, we're solving a problem, but we are leaving behind a legacy. And that's so valuable, so valuable.
Yeah, indeed. Contributions to the annual fund of the Rotary Foundation continue to grow steadily year on year, not as quickly as the demand from Rotarians for global grants, but still growing. What do you think it is that makes the annual fund an attractive destination for Rotarian contributions?
I think the fact that the annual fund is central to our work. It's supporting these grants out of the areas of focus. I come back to what I said about the reliability of the foundation, the trust we can place in the foundation. And so by contributing to the annual grants program, we can then ensure that we've got 7 areas of focus, as you know. We've added the environment just recently. And so we can ensure that these are funded as well as possible. But as you rightly say, you can only take out what you put in. And at the moment, we're almost victims of our own success, in as much as people are looking to do more than we can provide. So it becomes incumbent to continue to promote the importance of donating to the annual fund.
Yeah. On a slightly adjusted direction, I'm a real fan of the endowment fund, and I believe it enables people who take a longer term view of the work of our Rotary Foundation. Do you agree with that concept?
Very much so. Very much so. I think the good thing about the endowment fund, and we've made provision to the endowment fund as well, is that it'll be around long after we're around. We're only here for a certain length of time, but the endowment fund will be there in perpetuity. And of course, the great thing as well is, because of the endowment fund, that allows the trustees to know that there's a certain predictability going forward. in terms of the income that'll come out of the endowment fund. Now, that's assuming that any financial markets can be considered predictable, but at least it means that we have that fund there from which can be drawn, rather than the ups and downs that could occur with the annual giving.
Yeah. Let's chat about the Legacy Society. And again, I'm a huge fan of that. And as you're aware, I was talking about this when I was first trustee some little while ago. And you may be interested to know that Australia has I think it's right, the second highest uptake of membership of the new Legacy Society, where people pledge a significant bequest to the Rotary Foundation. Are you equally keen about the new Legacy Society?
Yeah, again, I'm anxious that people should have the opportunity to donate to provide for, call it what you will, the foundation according to their own means. And there are various different levels. And some people can provide enough to become part of the Legacy Society. Some people can provide enough to become a sustaining member. It's all about, according to your own means, what you can do. And so it's great that we have that. But never forget, it's not all about the honours or the titles or the badges that we wear. It's actually about the good the foundation can do. And so while I'm a great fan of all levels of giving, I always remember that it comes back to the good that the foundation can do. And that's a crucial importance as well. But you're very modest. You're saying you think Australia may be the second highest uptake of membership of the Legacy Society. I think it absolutely is. And I'd want to thank the Australians for their generosity in that direction.
Thank you. That's great. You mentioned the series of opportunities, if you like, for contribution to the Rotary Foundation. Down here, we have a series of levels. I guess they have the same everywhere. We have a number of members of the Paul Harris Society, which those folks commit to donate $1,000 US every year, which is wonderful, and it helps people reach major donor status. And in addition, one of the support groups is the Centurion Club, where members contribute 100 Australian dollars every year. And one of the purposes of this evening's event is the official launch of Centurion Week for our foundation. Do you have something similar in the UK?
We don't at the moment, actually, but it's interesting. I was learning a bit more about this yesterday in Canberra. So I think it would be fair to say watch this space, because I think it's a great initiative. I particularly like, they were showing me the little Centurion collecting vessel that you have. And again, coming back to my Scottish roots, I was particularly taken by the fact that once you put the $2 coin into that vessel, you can't get it out very easily. So that means that it's a prisoner. And very quickly, you can get your 100 Australian dollars in there. And so, no, I come back to what I said earlier, Ian. I think every avenue should be explored as to how to collect for and donate to the foundation. We did it over here some years ago. I remember my own club. I don't know if you have Smarties in Australia, the Smartie sweets. So the little Smartie tubes. And if you put a £1 coin in a Smartie tube, by the time it was filled, it would have about £30 or something in it. And we did that in the club. So I suppose that was the forerunner to the Centurion idea. So I would now, having thought it through, I would now claim the credit for having introduced the Centurion, the Centurion project to the world.
Subtlety has always been one of your strong points, Gordon. That's terrific. Now you're now a grandfather, I think twice.
Yeah.
Do you ever dwell on the need for us as Rotarians, and frankly senior citizens, most of us, to leave the world in a better and more peaceful state than when we arrived?
Well, yes, I am a grandfather twice over, and very proud of the fact. I don't know if both my granddaughters are excited about coming to Melbourne, because they don't know about it yet, but I know the rest of the family are very excited that they'll get the chance to visit Melbourne in a couple of years' time. I think it's incumbent on everyone to leave the world a slightly better place than when we arrived. You know, whether we're parents or grandparents or not. But certainly when you start to see that generation coming along and you look into the future, a future that they're going to have way beyond any of us with respect, I think it is important that we try and make the world a better place for them. And of course, that's really what Rotary and the Rotary Foundation is all about, making a more peaceful world, a more caring world, a kinder world, describe it as you will, but just making things that little bit better. That's not to say that things have been terribly bad for us. I'm sure our parents wanted to make the world a better place for us. And so it's a question of moving things forward by degree.
Yeah. Surely you'll bring Wee Ivy at least down to Melbourne for the convention, surely.
Oh yes, absolutely. When I say that they just don't appreciate that they'll be coming yet. They'll be coming.
Oh,
They'll be coming.
That's it. Good. Okay. What can you say to those folks on the call today that will encourage them to contribute for the first time or to keep contributing to our Rotary Foundation?
Well, I come back to my previous comments about the fact that we can trust the foundation with our money. And we know that every pound or penny, every dollar, every cent that we give to the foundation will be spent on good work. And it is all about trust. And again, I've mentioned the Charity Navigator reports earlier. That is testament that professionals have looked at us and given us that endorsement. It's good enough for me, and I would hope it'd be good enough for everybody. And also come back to this thing about the Scots and thrift, and particularly at the moment with the benefit of anything we are giving to foundation, to Polio Plus, I beg your pardon, will be tripled by the Gates Foundation, so that if I give $1,000 US, they'll give $2,000 US, and I like that as well. That's a good return.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that sort of bang for your buck, isn't it? Yeah. Now, you're amongst friends here, and nothing you say will go any further. You realise that, and the recording will self-destruct at the end of this, so don't worry about it. You've been president nominee for a whole month now. Have you yet given any thought to how you can do something specific to support the Rotary Foundation when you're president?
I have given it a bit of thought. You won't be surprised to know, but yes, it has only been a month. It maybe seems like a lot longer, but it's only been a month. And I have to say, when I meet district governors nominee all around the world who have been in post for considerably longer and seem to be considerably further forward with their planning, it gives me the odd sleepless night, but we're getting there. I think the one thing I want to do is I want to bring Rotary International and the Rotary Foundation ever closer together, because I think we are one Rotary. And again, as I touched on already, the foundation is the bedrock for the service that we provide, and gives us the financial ability to carry things out and to do the projects that we do. The other thing I would like to do is I would like to encourage greater personal giving to the foundation. We're both friends with Ravi Ravindran from Sri Lanka, and Ravi tweeted, I'm not a big follower of Twitter, but I saw a tweet from Ravi just about a couple of months ago where he said that not everyone has the resource to make a large contribution, but every Rotarian has the ability to make some contribution to the foundation. And I was concerned that more than 2/3 of our membership don't make any personal contribution to the foundation. And I think that we need to empower them and give them ownership of the foundation. And the way that they can have ownership is to make some contribution. Now, as Ravi says, not everybody can make a huge contribution. Not everybody can make a $1 million contribution to the foundation. But I do believe that it's within all our ability to make some sort of contribution. And so that's something that I will be pushing during my time as president, is that not only do we want to see the overall giving going up, but we also want to see the number of individuals who are making some sort of contribution increase as well, to give the full membership ownership of our foundation.
Well, they're two excellent objectives, so thank you for that. And as we move on to questions, can I personally thank you for taking the trouble to join us at this relatively civilised hour, and we could have done worse. So thanks for your effort. And as I said a little earlier in chat, you've been a busy person. I see things on Facebook, and I see Tom Gump in Minnesota, and I see someone in India and someone in Africa talking about the fact that you've been on chatting to them. I know how busy it can be in your position right now. So therefore, it's wonderful that you take the time to speak to little old us down here in Aussie. So thank you.
No, thank you. It's a great pleasure. You know that.
Now, Ian, we do have some questions that will come on chat for you and Gordon, if that's okay. And I'll ask Trish to lead off, if that's all right.
Thank you.
My pleasure. I have a question from, I'm just going back to my notes, from Casey Tan, who has actually stated that 1 in 3 Australian taxpayers have claimed over $3,750,000,000 in donations. And so he's asked, how can Rotary avail itself of the Australian community generosity and similar to overseas?
Let me start by saying that my good friend Casey is a chartered accountant. So hence the question that has an orientation in that direction, which shocks me not at all. One of the objectives we have within the Australian Rotary Foundation Trust, which has been established to facilitate contributions that are tax deductible for foundation activities here in Australia, and that is one of the objectives, is for us to go out to various corporates and other organisations that need the sort of project work that Rotary does. It's a relatively new thing in Australia, but it is growing continuously. And Gordon, what do you have something similar in the UK?
Yeah, we do. We have Rotary Foundation UK, which is an associate foundation of the Rotary Foundation, which allows us to obtain tax breaks on donations as well. And so, again, it's about the bang for your buck. For every pound, in our case, for every pound that we give, our beloved government will chip in 25 pence. And so you've got a 25% uplift in that contribution, providing you are a taxpayer. But I have to say, in the current situation, there's not many people here who are not taxpayers. And we certainly take advantage of that at every opportunity.
And just, Trish, before we take the next one of the reasons why the Rotary Foundation Australia Trust was recently established or altered was to ensure that contributions to the foundation, which can be used in Australia as well as overseas, can now receive a tax deduction. So it is a significant improvement, and the committee that runs the Rotary Foundation Australia Trust is charged with the responsibility and the objective of seeing how much we can raise from outside the Rotary family. And it's wonderful that Rotarians are so generous to the foundation, but there's lots of opportunities outside as well.
We have a comment, and then I'll move on to a question from Murray Wilson. He's actually congratulating the Rotarians behind the development of the Raise for Rotary program, saying it's a simple to use and a great way to bring money into the foundation. So there's a congratulations, and then I'll pass on to the next question from Jeff Summers. Is it possible to bequeath investments such as property or shares to the Rotary Foundation?
Sure it is. And the people to talk to are the absolute experts that we have in our staff at what used to be Parramatta, and it's now, I think, Norwest or somewhere in the western part of Sydney. They have a lot of information about how that sort of thing can happen. So I would recommend a chat to Mark Anderson or any of his staff at the office in Western Sydney.
Right. From Mark, who is the PDG and a former GSE team member. The GSE program was one of the best of the Rotary Foundation. In its current form, it's almost out of reach of most districts. Is there a possibility of it returning to its former format? After all, building bridges across the world was all at the heart of the program.
Allow me to agree with past District Governor Mark that the Group Study Exchange is one of the greatest programs for international goodwill that our Rotary Foundation ever had. I understand why it went in its previous form when the new grant model came in. When I was president, introduced the group cultural exchange to try and do similar things on the one hand, and also have teams of ambassadorial, let's call them scholars. One of the objectives I have in my planning, and let me just point towards my planning documents, which are in here for when I am chairman of trustees, and I would like to think that we can revisit that in some way or other. Because in the past, of course, it was funded by the foundation, it was offered to every district, and the vast majority of districts took it up. We won't be able to do that. We will have to do it on a user pays basis. But I'd like to think, Mark, that that's possible. No commitment, but I'd like to think it's possible.
And if I could come in there as well, I might not surprise you to know that I agree entirely with my Antipodean friend. But I also recognise why the trustees took the hard decision that they did to withdraw the programme at that time. It had been a great programme. It started in the days when international exchange was much less common, and of course, by the time it finished, people were able to conduct their own international exchanges, and many companies were sending people around the world, whereas previous to that, they hadn't. I'm very interested in the concept of relaunching it, but relaunching it on a virtual basis, learning again from this pandemic. And, if we can't get people to GSE, let's bring it to them. And one of the things that we were finding in this part of the world was we were finding it increasingly difficult for people to commit to being away from home at a certain point in their business lives for 4 or 6 weeks. And so the idea that they could have the exchange from the comfort of their own homes or offices without leaving their own businesses or their families, while it's not exactly the same, and back to what I was saying earlier about the need to meet face to face, it's not exactly the same as the original program. It could be that it might well work, and it could also become a development tool for membership. Because it would be much less expensive, and so perhaps we could extend it into younger people who were coming into Rotary and allowing it to be used as a personal development tool. So I've actually been doing quite a lot of work on that with some friends in Hong Kong, and I would certainly like to see something like that coming along.
Excellent.
Thank you. I think, Bruce, there are some more questions.
There are from Rajiv Wadwa. Can we contribute towards specific projects happening in various countries?
Yes, but there are constraints and parameters and levels of what we call directed giving. And again, probably tonight isn't the time to go into that level of detail, but I would encourage, again, a call to Mark Anderson at the office in Western Sydney. He's got all the options sitting in front of him. But yes, it's possible to do.
From Jennifer Coburn,
No.
value your thoughts in how to convince members to get past the concept of buying a Paul Harris Fellow, a very common thought of Rotarians in Australia.
G'day, Jen. I'll get Gordon's opinion first.
Well, I know in my part of the world, the Paul Harris Fellowship is used as an award. I have a view on that. I mean, I see the Paul Harris Fellowship as a recognition of a contribution. I wear my Paul Harris pin to celebrate the fact that I've given $1,000 to the Rotary Foundation, just as I will wear a poppy this week to celebrate the fact that I have made a contribution to the British Legion in respect of the Remembrance campaign. And so from a personal point of view, I think we have to move away a bit from using the Paul Harris Fellowship as a recognition and towards it simply being an acknowledgement of a donation. And when I see people being awarded the highest possible honour in Rotary, a Paul Harris Fellow, it irks me a little bit, because very often that means they're just using up their points. A club is using up its points to give somebody a Paul Harris Fellow. Don't get me wrong, that's not a bad thing, because again, it's all about promoting Rotary. But my philosophy as regards the Paul Harris Fellowship is it's simply a recognition of my donation to the foundation.
So Jennifer's point, I think, is how do we change that mindset? Because what you've identified is exactly the same as we have down here.
Yeah, well, it may well be that we have to investigate the possibility of having some other recognition that we can give people to replace that. And, that might be something we need to explore, as whether or not there shouldn't be some other sort of award that we can make in lieu of, instead of a Paul Harris Fellowship, and return the Paul Harris Fellowship to its original intention.
It is interesting that the value of a contribution of $1,000 now, compared with $1,000 when it was first started 70 years ago or whatever, is a significant difference. So one thought I've heard, and I don't necessarily support it, but one concept is to increase the dollar contribution to make it more, in inverted commas, meaningful. But that, to me, still won't solve the problem. It will still be seen as an award, and that's an issue we've been wrestling with down here for a long time.
Yeah. And then, of course, what happens is that those who are awarded it and those who use it as an award criticise the people who become Paul Harris Fellows because of their generosity, which is wrong.
Yeah, we can't have it both ways. Trish?
From Philip Headley, Europe and UK are not big contributors to the foundation. Why?
Gordon, you're in Europe and the UK, I think.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I need to point out that Philip Headley has ancestry in that part of the world. Yep, what do you think?
Well, I'm certainly very happy to lead on that one. And Philip, you're absolutely right. We're not big contributors to the foundation. One of the reasons is that in this part of the world, we're very guilty of raising money for other foundations. And, Rotary is very generous to a great many other charities, particularly in the Great Britain area. And again, I think Ian touched on it when he was talking about the Paul Harris issue. It's all about education. And we need to be educating people further in the benefits of supporting the foundation. If you look back, we're doing better than we were, which is a good thing. But the fact remains that we are not contributing as much to the foundation as we might do, largely because many Rotary clubs and districts are diverting funds into specific foundations here. And that is something that we have an education problem and we are trying to address.
Yeah, and one other reason within Europe is the tax structure, because in many of the countries in the EU, there is no tax deductibility for contributions, which does suppress, if you like, the desire to give. And in other parts, particularly Northern Europe and maybe Scandinavia, there's a feeling that they already pay massive tax, so the government should look after whatever the problem is. That's not quite the case here, so maybe that explains something.
From Casey Tan, I served on the Australian Communities Foundation Board and have established 2 charitable trusts. Bequests and endowment giving makes sense and is the fastest growth area. His comment is focus on this area for maximum results and impact.
And we will, Casey, trust me.
Yeah, good point.
A question from Trevor Hyatt, I think it is. Do all the members of Gordon's Club donate annually?
Indeed we do. We are all sustaining members, some of us at different levels, but every member of the Rotary Club of South Queensferry contributes to the annual fund, and it has done for a number of years now. We had a particular drive to encourage giving. One of our members, can't remember what his name was, but I think it began with Gordon and ended in McInally, found himself as the foundation officer for the club one year and took it upon himself to make the club better informed of the foundation. And on the back of becoming better informed, everybody signed up to become regular contributors.
Did you cede that question to Trevor so that he could ask it?
Absolutely.
We have a couple of comments from Greg Marlowe and echoed also from Mark, our PDG, regarding the Paul Harris Fellow. Comes down to education. You need to educate your members about the recognition of a donation. If you want to award someone, there are options out there, to which Mark has put in, we already have service above self-recognition. And our last question is actually Jenny, I think it's Jeff Leach. Can you supply Mark Anderson's contact details after, please?
Certainly. The answer is certainly. You would have it in any handbook, any district handbook that you have, but I can certainly grab it. Yep.
And as past Rotary International President knows, District 9810 has the handbook online in.
Yeah, that's why I'm struggling to find the one from 3 years ago, Daryl, that I can lay my hands on rather than try and do it on the computer while we're speaking.
I'll have the museum staff bring one round to you.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. No, I've got one here. Trust me.
And, as soon as I can. Look, I have a question for both of you, if I may, and it concerns Rotaract. So Rotaract is about to have access to the foundation. And so we're looking, I guess, at ways that we can help work with them and ways we can help guide them. And I'm particularly interested in your thoughts because about encouraging them to be donors themselves, particularly, say, from being a centurion, etc., because all this is going to rush in upon us. So we value your thoughts about Rotaract in general being involved with the foundation, but in particular, some strategies you've seen work to help encourage them to be donors.
After you, Gordon.
Well, first of all, I'm very pleased with the concept that Rotaract is becoming involved not only with Rotary but with the foundation. And if they are going to be part of Rotary, then they need to be a part of the foundation as well. You're absolutely right, though. We need to encourage them to give, and at that particular time in their life, they might not be able to give the sort of levels that some of the rest of us are. So that comes back to something like the Centurion concept, which is a nice, easy, painless way to collect and to make a contribution to the foundation. But I'm a great fan of this concept, and I know it's in its early stages, but this concept of integrating, elevating, call it what you will, Rotaract into Rotary, because I think we have a great deal to learn from the Rotaractors. They have a great contribution to make, and it's important that we value them. But by valuing them and by being valued, they need to realise that they have to make a commitment as well. And their commitment will be, hopefully, that they will, in their own way, make a contribution to the foundation. They will hold fundraisers for the foundation, and so they will have access to the foundation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Gordon,
I agree with that, Daryl, but also would comment that one of the challenges we have in Rotaract in many countries of the world is getting them, encouraging them, motivating them to move into Rotary. And once they move into Rotary, they're already part of the family, but then they become Rotarians and subject to the same amount of encouragement as the rest of us. But having said that, I think that ever since certainly Barry Rasson, my successor, was the leader, I think it's fair to say, in encouraging the involvement of Rotaract at all levels. And with that, greater participation becomes greater responsibility to an extent. So where Gordon says they need to recognise to whatever their capacity is to be a supporter of the Rotary Foundation. I agree with that completely.
Okay. Now, I think Mark Anderson's details have just been posted in the chat. If you'd like to open up the chat, you can find it there. We were able to deal with that. Gordon, you should know that we've had a call from the Roman Emperor Hadrian during this call, and he's expressed his enormous delight to see Centurions returning to Scotland after all those years when he had to build a wall to keep you people out.
Yeah, and at the moment we're giving serious consideration to rebuilding it to keep some other people out.
Those damn Sassenachs.
We've still got a little bit of time left, and we're happy to take any questions from the audience, from attendees at the moment. We've done things with chat, but we're more than happy if anyone wants to unmute, put your hand up or just speak. And Gordon and Ian are happy to take any questions from there.
We have got one final question from Ian Ballantyne in the chat. In Australia, considerable contributions are also made by clubs. Is it the same in other countries?
Mr. Ballantyne, sorry, can we have that again?
Absolutely.
I was just asking the question. We seem to be talking a lot about personal contributions. Little has been mentioned of club contributions. And in Australia, my understanding is considerable contributions are made by clubs. And I'm just wondering if that is the same trend overseas. Thanks.
Well, certainly you're quite right, Ian. The vast majority of contributions to the foundation in our part of the world comes from clubs. And a lot of clubs fundraise specifically for the foundation. But again, in other parts of the world with which I'm familiar, a lot of it does come from individuals as well. Tell us about, I can't call it RIBI anymore. What is it, Gordon, in UK?
Oh, it's now Rotary Great Britain and Ireland, but it's what is it? I can't remember the expression. A duck's a duck or something. But we have had several, clubs here. Many clubs here will do fundraisers for the foundation. All sorts of imaginative things. We'll put on concerts, we'll hold gala days, etc. And so there is a culture of clubs fundraising for the foundation, in addition to their members making some sort of personal contribution. I think that's fairly common throughout the whole of United Kingdom and Ireland. I can't say, speak for the EU. But I see occasional things online about fundraising for the foundation in the EU. So I think it's the same sort of thing, maybe not to the level that you do in Australia, but certainly that is not uncommon here either.
Yeah, I keep on forgetting you're not in Europe anymore. I'm slow to catch up.
Don't get me started on that one.
Indeed.
Scotland would like to be.
Better believe it.
Now we have that sounded like Philip. Can I respond to Greg Marlowe's comment in chat, which was that it comes back to an invitation you need to ask, in brackets anyone, to join. Let me entirely agree with that and endorse that. When I made the comment about getting Rotaractors into Rotary, I wasn't being rude or being detrimental or negative about Rotaractors. It was about us. We do not in any way do enough to attract Rotaract members into our clubs. Nowhere near enough. And there's a lot of people that I've got to meet over the years that have come to Rotary through Rotaract. But there's a huge number in addition that don't. They just get to the end of Rotaract and drift off. Many people say they're not ready at that stage. Well, that may or may not be the case, but you've got to stay in touch with them. And you've got to, it's exactly the same as past youth exchange students or past GSC team members or past ambassador or scholars or whatever. Don't invite them to the club once when they come back, say, well done, and never see them again. They are people who already understand the Rotary way. And it's absurd for us to just lose track of them.
And Ian, if I
think
may,
that-
sorry, Gordon, I met with all of the senior Rotaract leaders in this district last week. We had a summit meeting, and I asked that very question: why won't you join Rotary clubs? And a couple of the young ones there said, we will certainly join our local Rotary clubs because they've welcomed us. They come to our events, they support us, we know them. And although they're a different age group altogether, we feel welcome. And I think what Ian's saying is absolutely correct. It's a lesson to us in Rotary, not the other way around.
Yeah, that was the point, the very point I was going to make, Darrell. And the interesting thing is that there are some parts of the world where the transition from Rotaract through to Rotary works very well. And I think that's the very reason that it does work well in those parts, is that they are made welcome. They're made to feel part of Rotary from the get-go. And that's the way forward. And of course, the other way forward for groups, Rotaract clubs that perhaps can't relate terribly well to the Rotary clubs in their area, is that they can form new Rotary clubs so that they can be doing it the way they want to do it. Because that's so important, is that we have to make Rotary available to people in the style that they want to be involved. There are a lot of us who are comfortable with the more traditional type of Rotary club. And that's fine. And there will still be people who want to join that type of Rotary club. But we have to have those other styles of Rotary club around that people can be part of, so that anybody with Rotary in their heart can become part of the organisation.
Yes. And I do know, Darrell, that Director Jesse Harmon has all sorts of good ideas about closer involvement between Rotary and Rotaractors over the next duration of her membership on the board of directors of Rotary International. So watch this space.
Tremendous, tremendous. Now, we've got a question from Rajiv. Rajiv, if you don't go off mute and ask your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dal. First of all, I'd like to congratulate everybody involved in kind of modernizing the foundation as such. One of the things I found really difficult is to find what's happening in the other part of the world with Rotary projects. And one of the most frustrating thing was to go on the Rotary website and try to search for these projects. Amazingly, I found the answer by Googling it. That's the best way you can find out what's happening in Rotary world. I think while you are doing all this, it would be really amazing if there could be like number of at least the major projects with the global grants, at least they get listed, highlighted, so that people who are, whether they are from corporates or outside, then they can see, okay, all these projects are there. I want to donate towards, let's say, literacy or disease prevention. Then, okay, in this country, this is happening. Let me support this particular project. I think people are attracted towards project rather than just the area of where that project belongs. I think that way we will be able to get more funds and I guess more attention.
Thanks, Rajiv.
Do you have a comment, Gordo? Because I will.
I'll let you go first.
Thank you. Two issues. First of all, many of us have been for a long time, I would be bold enough to say decades, been less than enthusiastic about the RI website and its ease of navigation, etc. I know that the staff, including the new IT head, are very keen on improving that, and they are putting a lot of resources into improving just that. So I rather hope, Rajiv, that it becomes easier for you to find what it is you're talking about sometime in the future. But the second point I would make is that when Rotarians are keen on particular projects in a particular area and something more specific than a general area of focus, I encourage them all to talk to their district governor-elect prior to him or her going to the International Assembly and give that person what we used to call in the horse racing industry riding instructions to say, we're really interested in a project on literacy in Bangladesh, and the district governor-elect can investigate and can find out and can say to the incoming district governor in Bangladesh, we've got interest in a literacy project there. So what can you do? Establish contact that way. I find that always works.
Yeah, and the point I was going to make was exactly the one Ian made about the improvements that we're promised in the Rotary website, and the new IT manager, the new IT director is very keen to see things improve, because I think we all know that at present the information is there, but you need to be Sherlock Holmes to discover it sometimes, and that's the biggest challenge of all. I see one final question, and this might be a very appropriate final question in the chat line from Greg Marlowe, who would like to know, do I have a favourite Scotch? It wants to, might not surprise you to know that I do. I don't know if anybody down there is aware of Glenmorangie. And I say Glenmorangie, not Glenmorangie, it's Glenmorangie. It's probably my favourite Scotch, mainly because for many years it helped fund my mother's pension, because my father was financial director for Glenmorangie for a great many years, and the family had some interest in it. But in spite of that, it's a good Scotch, and I would encourage anybody to try and drink it.
And I need to inform those on the line that not only does Gordon have an interest in Glenmorangie, but he has the best collection of interesting gins that I've ever seen. He has an entire cupboard full of gins from all over the place, of varying colours and all of that sort of stuff. So it's amazing. You really do scrub up remarkably well, Gordon, under the circumstances.
Well, there we go. Now, look, I think we do have one final question from District Governor-elect Ken Miller from 9810. Ken, if you'd like to ask your question, then we might need to wrap up.
Thanks very much. This has been a fantastic session. I've really enjoyed it. And my question's to do with marketing a foundation. It's usually considered by a lot of Rotarians to be a fairly dry subject. And I just wondered, in your travels around the world, if you have had access to or witnessed left of centre marketing technique to pique the interest of some of our Rotarians.
Let me go first. Ken, I find that it's polio eradication that attracts the most off-the-wall type methods of fundraising. Gordon, is it New Year's Eve or New Year's Day when you swim in the Firth of Forth? That's for polio, isn't it?
Well, not every New Year's Day, but it has been known on a couple of occasions I've swum in the Firth of Forth, which, for those of you who don't know your geography, is the east coast of Scotland on the 1st of January, which is not the warmest of parts of the world to be swimming. But Ian's absolutely right. I think the most creative ways of marketing fundraising for the foundation has come through End Polio, and many people have done some extremely creative things to promote that. We've got a great thing here, the Purple Crocus campaign, which we plant purple crocuses to represent the pinky of the children that have been vaccinated. And that over the years has been a great awareness raising campaign for the Polio Fund. In and of itself, it doesn't raise a great deal of money, but it raises awareness, and therefore people are more familiar with what we're trying to do. We light buildings up, floodlight buildings purple on Polio Day. The Tower of London, you may have seen it on your social media, the Tower of London was floodlit in purple just a couple of weeks ago for the very same reason. But it does tend to be more the polio eradication and polio now that attracts that sort of slightly more off the wall type of thing.
I think one of the reasons, Gordon, why that happens is because it is something specific. The Rotary Foundation is an amorphous pot, if you like, but eradicating polio is something specific to which people non-Rotarians can readily identify, and I think that helps.
Sure. Ian and Gordon, do you have any final words that you want to leave us leave us with at all on this wonderful night, and then we'll have some words to finish. But either of you or both.
I have two words. Support Foundation. Those are the two words. But in addition, can I thank my friend Gordon for agreeing to join us? It's wonderful, and we're looking forward to. I don't like Scotch whisky, but I could be encouraged if you insist next time we're together.
Oh, well, I mean, Ian's probably used two words that I would have used, but the other two words I would use is thank you. Thank you for the opportunity of letting me join you today, but thank you for all you do for Rotary. Thank you for all you do for the Rotary Foundation. And it's been a real pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed the last hour. I look forward to breakfast now, and we shall get on with the rest of the day.
Well, Gordon and Ian, on behalf of all of those who were present, can I just express our sincere thanks. It's been an absolute delight to have both of you. And Gordon, you raised the issues and things that we've learnt during the pandemic. And, you know, if you told us 2 years ago that we would be sitting on a screen talking to each other in the way that we are with the numbers that we've got across the world, then we all would have thought that Glenmorangie had gone to your head. But it's just, it's a wonderful feature that we're able to do this. We're absolutely delighted to see so many people here tonight from right across Australia and the world. And what a privilege it's been to have Ian, to have your wisdom, to have your knowledge, your experience. And Gordon, we already knew that because you selected Melbourne. And what more could we say in that regard? And Gordon, as you'll discover when you come down under again, everyone else in Australia wants to be Melbourne, but they can't. So thank you again for being here, for giving us such a wonderful, wonderful night of foundation conversation. And again, as I say, it's just incredible to think we've had people from Turkey, from Dubai, from New Zealand, from Italy as part of our audience tonight, and New Zealand as well, and all parts of Australia. So thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Rotarians, it's great to have you here. Thank you very much. We're going to finish. As I say, the recording will be up on the District 9810 website, but it's great to have you here, and all power to you, and let's keep serving to change lives. Thank you again, and good night.
Thanks very much. It's been great to be
Thanks,
with you.
Daryl.